Well, if you're talking about population increasing in size and changing in composition, so we must separate the two issues. One is just sheer numbers. If your infrastructure cannot support and your resources cannot support, then having huge number, regardless of the quality of the people, then you have a problem straight away. Now, that may sound strange, but actually it's relatively straightforward in terms of solving. Just ensure that you have the resources, the infrastructure to cope with the number of people or bodies, so to speak. But the more challenging issue, I think, is the type of foreigners that you are bringing in. You want to just not look at quantity, but look at quality. Because if you have good quality foreigners coming in, doing jobs that Singaporeans either cannot do or don't want to do, then you can have a complementary ecosystem. So even if your density increased and if your infrastructure could support, you can actually have vibrancy, you can actually have people complementing each other. Of course, it presupposes trust, integration, and you need to work at that. Now, however, if we are not solving those issues, then even though you have slight increase in numbers, you could have a very terrible situation. So I think we need to bear in mind that density, number of people divided by square area, moving forward, we need to construe density as just a number. And if everybody likes everybody, then the same density can be very cozy. But if people don't like each other, the same density can be crowdedness or clustering. And I think that distinction needs to be made. Well, I think many people predict that moving forward, because of the flow of capital and the nature of technology, and the haves and have-nots actually will gravitate towards poles. So what that means is your Gini coefficient will get larger, right? Your income equality will get larger. That's a possibility, which we should definitely not rule out, but it's not a necessity. A lot of it is going to depend on how the technology actually implements itself and so on. But I think we get a little bit confused about income inequality and the nature of the problem that one should be concerned with. If I make everybody very poor, my income equality will be very low. And that is not what anybody wants. So the issue may not be income inequality per se. The issue is really, can even the lower income have a very reasonable wage, a good quality of living? That's number one. And number two is, despite the income inequality, do I have very good opportunities for social mobility? Because if I have good social mobilities, I am not born and stuck in a particular lower strata, and that might be quite okay, despite there is a large ladder and a large income inequality. Finally, I also should note that citizens of a country do not compare your income inequality with other countries and decide whether you are living a good life or not. Actually, citizens compare my current life with the recent years that I've been living. And so what is important is not just comparing your income inequality across countries, but the way of living, the quality of life within a country, within a household, within an individual across time. And looking at social mobility, those are the issues of concern and the issues that really matter. Well, most people would agree that education is the most important leveler, and that's probably correct. However, it's not just about providing education that's accessible, education that is acceptable and affordable. It is quite important, I think, to look at the structural issues. So take Singapore, for example. One of the problems is that we have a huge tuition industry, that even very good and very smart people are taking all kinds of tuition where it's probably not necessary. Now, if that continues and if we do not do something about it, then you will still have a situation that despite having good schools, students from lower income or children from lower income may not have access to tuition facilities, and they will so-called still lose out. And then you get a vicious cycle, and despite the good quality, affordable, acceptable, and education, the tuition industry may actually be the spoiler, so to speak. You therefore need to look at it from a larger perspective and try to address these difficult issues. Now, one way is to simply ensure that you allow people, especially children and others from middle and higher income, to be doing good volunteer work and offering free tuition, for example, to children or students from a lower income. Of course, the more fundamental way is, do we really need these tuition classes? And if we could reduce that, that would be actually probably a positive thing as well. Well, there's going to be plenty of social divides that will definitely come. The issue is, how do you confront them? Could you prevent some of these? And when they happen, do you respond in a good way, effective way, and whether your recovery process from bad incidents are effective. Of course, the clearest divide that we all know in cities, and definitely in Singapore, is the local-foreigner divide. I mean, that itself cut across socio-economic classes and income differences. Right, and that's because people do comparisons, and concerns are pretty legitimate. You know, we can talk about the entire issue. But because of demographic diversity, there are other social divides that perhaps are less clear that we may need to pay even more attention to. One is just simply value differences. Now, if you think about it, as we have less babies, as people are not getting married, there's going to be a huge proportion of the population that are going to be singles. Right, both foreigners and especially citizens. Now, what that means is that there will be increasingly social divides or tensions between, say, people who are singles versus people with families when they're looking for the same resources, and when you have a policy that looks like you favor one group more than the other. So these are potential tensions that one got to look out for, but they are not insurmountable at all. Right? It is possible to bring people together. Let people realize that the building block is about homes, so that you may be single, but you can still say Singapore is my home. You could be a foreigner, but you could say that Singapore is a good second home, it's a good home away from home. And the moment we try to bring people together through the notion of home within a community, then it might be possible to integrate and deal with these different social divides in a way that actually capitalize on their strengths, so that your diversity becomes not a liability, but becomes a strength and becomes an asset.